Let's now bring in Stephen Farnsworth, political analyst and author of Spinner-in-Chief, How Presidents Sell Their Policies and Themselves. Stephen, good evening and thanks for your time.
Glad to be here.
Big breaking news tonight. Your reaction to Donald Trump threatening 25% tax on all products coming in from Mexico and Canada.
Well, there's absolutely no way to sugarcoat the consequences of something like this. This would be an immense challenge for the American economy and for the Canadian economy. When you talk about these tariffs, they would be immense price increases on all kinds of goods. It would be very difficult for agriculture, for auto manufacturing, for energy. As you go down the list, the interactions, economic and otherwise, between the U.S. and Canada would be dramatically altered. But it's important to remember at the same time that sometimes Donald Trump talks about these things as a way of getting leverage without actually imposing them. I think that the idea that Donald Trump may very well have here is to push the Canadians towards a commitment to a much, much stricter reality regarding the border, and that may allow him to say, well, I don't need to impose the tariffs of this magnitude or tariffs at all, because the Canadians understood that I mean business and they've made these adjustments.
Yeah, because it's very interesting to see how this comment has come on his social media with a very, very clear caveat. There are, of course, these are two very different issues, but he has clubbed them both together with these conditions of tightening the border, etc. But till that clampdown really happens, till these two countries move towards working on the border together, Stephen, what do you think really happens in the interim? Of course, there is time before he assumes office on January 20th. There is still time to have these negotiations, discussions. What do you think is going to play out?
Well, my guess is that the Canadians will be very, very interested in making some kind of deal, some kind of accommodation, so that Donald Trump can claim a win here without having to impose tariffs of this magnitude. The reality, of course, with respect to tariffs and counter tariffs, we're talking about an immense price increase for consumers. It's likely to be very, very recessionary. That's going to create lots of problems for the American economy. And Donald Trump doesn't want to be unpopular. And so sometimes he makes threats in order to get the kind of leverage that he needs to get an outcome where he can claim a win. I do think that the idea of pushing the United States into a recession is not something that Trump would want to contemplate.
Yeah, let's talk about this a little more, because as we know, Donald Trump has repeatedly said that targeting foreign countries to pay tariffs. But the fact is, mostly, those tariffs are actually paid by companies that are purchasing or importing those goods. And those typically will be passed on to the American consumer. And that is completely opposite to the major promises of Trump's campaign of, lowering the cost of living in general for Americans and the cost of gas in particular.
Right. And that's why I think that Donald Trump makes a statement like this and will make adjustments along the way, particularly if the Canadians demonstrate a willingness to be cooperative here. The United States cannot deal with these price increases. Remember, the big reason Donald Trump won this election is because of concerns over inflation. And what's more inflationary than an environment where there are these counter tariffs and tariffs 25% or greater, not only with Canada and Mexico, but also even bigger tariffs being proposed for China. The reality for consumers is that this would be really, really painful. Donald Trump's going to want to avoid that because he doesn't want to become unpopular.
One last question before I let you go, Stephen, about the pressure this continues to put on this relationship, this special relationship between Canada and the U.S., supposed to be close as allies. But of course, things always become a little difficult with the Trump administration. What do you think is going to happen with this relationship next 4 years?
Well, I think it's important to remember that Donald Trump is less interested in keeping alliances alive and healthy than most presidents in the last 70 or 80 years. You're talking about a president who's much more isolationist than any president in the post-World War II environment. That's going to mean lots of trouble. I don't know that Canada is going to bear the brunt of it. I tend to think that Trump is more hostile to Europeans than Canadians, but the reality is that there is a dynamic that is going to be rough sledding for both countries going forward.
All right, we'll leave it at that for tonight. Stephen Farnsworth, political analyst. Thanks for joining us, Stephen, on this big headline tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.